Welcome to this very special JNS Roundtable here on JNS TV. My name is Josh Haston, correspondent for JNS News. I'm here with Alex Trayman, CEO of JNS. Very special guest is here to my left, Tila Falek-Levy. She is a philanthropist. She is a pro-Israel advocate, also a podcast producer. Tila, welcome back to Israel.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
A lot of news going on in the last several days over the weekend. The polarization taking place between left and right in the U.S. and America, it's really gotten out of control. Especially we saw the images of Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated, big pro-Israel activist, a conservative, a family man, really with a following of millions of people in the U.S. who are looking for those values which we cherish so much here at JNS and between the three of us. Let's talk about polarization and let's bring in what happened, the terrible Charlie Kirk assassination. Ladies first.
Thank you. First of all, it's devastating, and my heart and condolences goes out to him, his family, his little children who will really never really know their father in person, but thank God they will have that legacy. And hopefully people will continue to live on through, his message will live on through his videos and through everything that he believed in and his philosophy. One thing you left out is that he was also a man of faith, and we are all people of faith. And I think that that is one very important point, not just about Charlie, but about our conversation. The people, I think it's faith versus non-believers. And the problem with what's going on in America and also here in Israel is that I feel like the left has lost faith in God, faith in their history, faith in their identity, who they are, either as Americans, as Jews. The left in America and the left in Israel have a lot of things in common, although their missions are very different. At the end of the day, the root of it is the same. And they're so angry, and I don't understand why. So Charlie is just a symbol of what we all believed in, but it's a lot deeper than that. It's a lot more than that. And we have to continue to fight for the values that he believed in, that we believed in, we believe in. And the people in the right here in Israel and in America, we need to keep fighting.
Alex, talk about the significance of his murder. You know, people are saying that he could have been the president of the United States one day, but the bigger picture in terms of the polarization between right and left in the U.S. and in Israel also.
Well, first of all, I think Charlie Kirk was pro-American. You know, he happened to be pro-Israel also. He'd been to Israel many times, very supportive of Israel, Israeli rights in Judea and Samaria, but that wasn't what made him so popular. What made him so popular was that he was standing up for American values. And you saw even where he was murdered on the campus of the University of Utah. And what was he doing? He was going into the college campuses, these arenas that are supposed to be the training grounds for intellectual capacity for the next generations, and they have been corrupted. And we see that the Qataris have poured money into the universities, that the universities have become first, they were liberal, and then they became progressive, and now they're becoming woke. And Charlie Kirk went into this sea, of corrupted thinking, and was just trying to use basic common sense to speak to students, let students come up and, challenge his ideas, and then he would just in his like very fierce debating style, just knock them down and to fight back. And what happens is that the left, they are based on ideology without facts. They're based on ideology without thinking. And so it actually is pretty easy for somebody who has a little bit of knowledge, who's done their homework, to go in and to counter a lot of this garbage. And so what happens is that you see one after the next students that go up against him, he just puts them down. Yeah. And so ultimately what happens is the leftist says, well, I still want my ideology to win, even if my facts and my ideas don't hold weight. And then they resort to violence.
There's a very big part of this that we didn't bring up yet. And I think that has to do a lot with freedom of speech. And so you have the left screaming that they want freedom of speech. And here you have a person that's actually celebrating freedom of speech. The debates were real debates where he would put his microphone down and allow other people to give their opinions, share their thoughts, have that freedom of speech. And it's not that he would shut them down. That's a real debate when one side gets a fair shot at it and the other side gets to counter that. And while he celebrated the values that supposedly the left represents about freedom of speech, he actually got shut down for freedom of speech.
They would call him a fascist also. People would call him a fascist. I've seen video clips of somebody say, "You're a fascist." He's I'm not a fascist.
And he was listening to them.
I believe in a free society and freedom of ideas, right? So, it's a lot of times what the left does is that they accuse you of exactly what they do. This is like a number one, I don't know if it's number one, but it's definitely part of their playbook is always to accuse the other side of what they want. So they want to actually shut down debate. And the way they shut down debate in this case was to shoot Charlie Kirk.
So a suspect is in custody. His name is Tyler Robinson, and we don't have all the details yet, but they're saying that he was radicalized by the left. He potentially was part of the Antifa extreme left-wing movement. I want to say a couple things. Number one, I had the privilege of meeting Charlie Kirk in 2019. I wrote about it on jns.org. I interviewed him. I didn't really know too much about him until he came to Israel, so you can check that out. And secondly, last night, the cartoon Family Guy? You guys familiar with that? So I've never seen a whole episode, but last night I was just scrolling through my television and Family Guy came on, and somehow the scene in this cartoon shifted to a MAGA rally, a Donald Trump rally. And they painted a picture. Again, I know it's just a cartoon, but they painted a picture. Basically, it was a satire of MAGA, of the right, and it had a sign at this supposed MAGA event that said whites only. As if you're a Trump supporter, if you're a Charlie Kirk, if you're one of these people, that automatically makes you a right-wing extremist, a racist, and that's exactly the opposite of what he stood for. But that's media, that's Hollywood, that's popular television. They're creating this image of the right being extremist, fascist, and whatnot. And then you have this murder.
There's another part. That the left is the party of tolerance, of peace, of caring about human rights. Really? What human rights, what peace, and what tolerance do you have in all of these violent situations? And what's crazy is that the violence is coming from the left. I still am yet to see one of these shooters that isn't shooting in the name of transgender, in the name of their sexuality or their gender or their, crazy radical ideas. And yet the right is the one that is supposedly like the radical party and the extreme party. I think that people really have a problem with God, with family values, and with real tolerance and freedom of speech. And so when a person or a party or even a rally represents those values, that's threatening to people who don't have those beliefs, because the people that are on the left, obviously you can't generalize, but are very much about themselves. They're thinking about, how do I feel? How do I look? How do I think? And that's not actual tolerance. Tolerance is exactly what Charlie represented. Tolerance was presenting, this is who I am. I'm a family man. I'm an American patriot. I believe in God. This is me. Who are you? And he would let them speak. But so many people just want to hear themselves speak, and they don't actually want to listen to what the other person has to say. And I feel like that's what's happening here in Israel and in the United States, because here in Israel, it's a very similar phenomenon. They're preaching other values, whether it's humanity, hostages, Palestinian rights. The rhetoric changes, but the idea and the identity of what is trying to be portrayed is still coming from the same place.
Look, I think it's very important that we don't just say that violence is coming from the left in the United States, especially when you look at a shooter like this. We don't yet know his motives. If he was part of Antifa, then that's something totally different, because Antifa is specifically there to be domestic terrorists that bring violence and riots and hatred into the society.
Bullet supposedly had a message about protection of transgender issues.
Sure, and we don't know necessarily why that might have.
We have no idea.
But we have seen cases where you do have the right-wing lone wolf terrorists, and because you have another problem in America, which is mental illness. People are on depression medicine, anxiety medicines. People are watching the most violent television and movies, and people are playing Fortnite and other very realistic first-person murder games, late into the night, and it causes illness, right? It really does. And then people have access to guns, and then they're being incited. And so when you put this toxic combination together, people can do very dangerous things. And if it is Antifa, then part of what they may be hoping is that by taking out somebody like a Charlie Kirk, not only do they shut down this guy who's been so effective on the college campus and possibly even changing the whole discourse in the United States, but they're actually hoping that right-wing extremists will now come out and take aim at left-wingers because they're trying to sow discord in the country and disunity, because that is how they break down society.
I want to say something about the word tolerance. One of my rabbis taught me at one point, if you keep using the word tolerance and I tolerate this and that, eventually you will start tolerating evil. That's what he taught me.
What does the word tolerance mean? It means putting up with behavior that is otherwise completely unacceptable. That's the meaning of the word tolerance. Well, I'm just going to put up with this. Now, right. I think that the big difference, though, when you talk about the right versus left violence is in the reaction to what happened to Charlie Kirk. If you look at the George Floyd murder, which, by the way, it's still, to me, not clear that a police officer intentionally killed this man. This guy was high on drugs. George Floyd, was claiming, I saw footage of him in the back of the car even before he was taken out of the police car saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. So we don't know exactly what happened. But here you have a guy who was not an ideologue by any means, was a criminal, was robbing a store, was high on drugs, and he dies, he gets killed. We don't know what happened exactly, but the next thing you know, America is on fire.
Literally.
Because this guy becomes a symbol for the left. And here you have a real symbol for the right in Charlie Kirk. And you see, the right wing, they're not rioting over this.
No, and the left is actually celebrating, and they're justifying the killer's motives. And at the end of the day, I was hoping that it would be that moment where the right would actually peacefully protest and where they would actually come out and be heard for whatever their values are, because you had the Martin Luther King assassination, which is a horrible moment in history, but something changed and people changed and America changed. So not to, make a joke out of it, but is this the turning point of America?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Make it the turning point of America?
I was going to ask you next, is this going to have a ripple effect like never before? I mean, I thought 9/11 would change everything forever.
And it did for a while.
It did for a while.
9/11 changed everything. I mean,
yeah, I think but now, I was in New York a few years ago on September 11th, and you didn't feel it at all.
I was there on September 11th this year.
Did you feel anything?
I did not know it was September 11th until I looked at my phone. I mean, we know because we're expecting that day and we lived through that day. I'm sure there were memorials, but on the street, you did not feel it. I just want to say something about what you were saying in America about Fortnite and the violence. I don't know why, and I don't know how people justify it. And it's true that in America, there are all kinds of serious issues, but we're here in Israel. People have actually seen war. People have guns on them everywhere they go. Why is it that in Israel, that there are gun safety laws and people know how to use their guns and every single person around us is armed, and yet you don't have these situations of gun violence like you do in America? Now you're going to say maybe it's because of their mental health. Maybe it's because of what they were watching, like you're saying. But here you have a society that plays Fortnite, watches the same movies in Israel, lives through real war, and then it's healthier when it comes to gun violence and protection and having that right to carry. And we don't have that kind of safety in America when it comes to guns. What is the difference?
Well, there's a few things. First of all, in Israel, we don't have a right to carry. Okay, there's no right to have guns, even if you do have a gun, and not everybody gets access to a gun. You're able to carry a single pistol. You're able to own up to 50 rounds. Now they're extending the law to 100 rounds. You cannot get an assault rifle. Okay, so you could never be in a situation where you could take out a guy from 200 meters away or have a whole cache of weapons. That's number one. There's no right to bear arms in Israel. Just the police understand that terrorists get neutralized by overt civilians. But number two, the reason is because we do go through real wars. The people that are carrying guns, for the most part, have served in the military. They understand the burden of carrying the weapon. weapon. They're also trained that if they fire that weapon, even in an incident where there's a terrorist, you cannot, we were just talking about this before the show, you cannot simply just take out somebody, even if they just carried out an act of terror. If a terrorist is coming at you with a knife, you can shoot him. If the terrorist drops his knife on the floor because he trips, you can't shoot him anymore. Okay, so there's strict training here, and also there are very robust police checks before they allow anybody to have a weapon. They make sure that that person is mentally stable. They don't just give a weapon in Israel to everybody.
You have to have a doctor's note. You can't. It's a lengthy bureaucratic process, and they do it for a reason. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you can, in the United States, you can go into like a Walmart or Kmart and buy some sort of rifle.
I live in Florida. It's very easy.
Yeah.
And there are other states, obviously, that are different. It's very easy. Of course, it's good to have access to be able to defend yourself, because we don't ever want to be in a situation, especially as Jews, that you're sitting at a kosher restaurant or at a synagogue and somebody walks in with an automatic weapon that they may have purchased legally, probably did, and then nobody has any way of reacting. So we're very lucky that we have in Florida access to protect ourselves. But there's a serious problem, because it's true. There are people with severe mental illness or that don't have the proper training that are getting access to these weapons, and it's actually making America a more dangerous place. So it's a fine line. I brought it up because it's a nice discussion and we're all on the same page. But at the end of the day, it's a threat. It's a threat to liberty either way.
I think it is more important, though, to talk about the rhetoric of the left and how this can actually lead to violence. I mean, we see this in Israel all the time. I mean, the things that the left are talking about. For years, the left has been talking about civil war. Leaders of the left, including people running for prime minister, including people that have served the prime minister, have said that the protests are going to end in political violence, that there could be another assassination like we saw. I mean, Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, I believe, in 1994. And you hear this rhetoric that's really intense and very, very dangerous. At the same time, they're just inciting protesters, and we've seen recently, in Israel, car was lit in Jerusalem, not far from the prime minister's house. I personally know a minister that had a crazy man arrive at his front door with a knife. So there is a lot of incitement to violence over here, and you almost get the sense that the left wants to see that violence, and at the same time they also want to draw the right wing into violence. And then what will happen if the right wing does respond with violence? Then they will turn on the right and say that the right wing is the violent party here. So they're baiting a situation. I mean, what kind of responsible leadership would call for civil war in their own country? And that's what we're seeing here in Israel.
Or to take out a prime minister. I hear threats of the prime minister's life all the time.
Just last night, somebody was arrested
and immediately released.
Threat to the prime minister.
Many people are arrested and immediately released. They put them right back on the street. So what does that mean? You're literally living in a society where people are telling you that they want to kill their leader. And it's not so easy in Israel. People have a lot of security, but it's a scary thought. But why are they so angry? Why violence? Why are people on the left so angry that they can't tolerate that the right has different ideology? What is it?
Listen, it's the hypocrisy. As you said before, you have this vision of somebody who's left-wing, open-minded, really interested in free speech. But at the end of the day, they're actually trying to silence. And when they can't win at the ballot box, they, over the last several years, have been taking these alternative routes, namely the demonstrations in the streets, hijacking, unfortunately, many of them, the hostage campaign, and they're out there being extremely loud. The incident you spoke about in Jerusalem, it's not the profile of somebody who would carry out violent crimes. You got an 80-year-old man who was arrested and then a 60-year-old man, both of them who came from somewhere else in the country to Jerusalem and set this car on fire. And it ends up the car actually belonged to an IDF reservist who just had twins. So just completely crazy, the situation.
I think that in the United States and in Israel, there are different causes, like at the root of the differences between the right and the left. In Israel, and I can speak more towards this because I've been here for the last 20 plus years. you do see that there is a deep debate about the future of the country, specifically when you talk about, an 80-year-old and 70-year-olds are the ones that are out protesting. It's because the secular left built this country. They came here and with their blood, sweat, and tears, they're the ones that paved the roads, that plowed the farms, that built the buildings.
But there's a different phenomenon here too, because the people that are on the left and are super liberal and open-minded are also not focusing on families, on marriage, on having children. So the future of this country actually is probably more right-wing because you have the extreme right Orthodox and everything in between that are having children and are going to be our future voters.
So that's exactly right. The left wing, they say, we built this country. Okay, it's ours, and they think that they own it. And what they actually want is to see Israel to be some kind of a secular extension of Western Europe on the Eastern Mediterranean, a place where, they can feel free and loved in Paris and in London and in Berlin. And it just happens to be that we speak a different language. It wasn't really safe for us in Europe. So we live over here, but we share the same secular values as Western Europe. And that's what we want Israel to be. And as you've correctly noted, that the right wing in Israel, the ones that care about living in Judea and Samaria, the ones that care about religious values, the ones that really believe in God and faith and believe in Israel as a biblical value, so the left sees that they are taking over, and they look at this government that was formed in Israel now after 5 consecutive elections of electoral standoff. All of a sudden, Netanyahu and the entire right-wing base, they basically won a landslide victory over the left, where they have
if there was elections, would probably happen again with a much bigger number.
Exactly. And that's the reason why the left wing is willing to tear down this country, because they said, we did not build this country with our blood, sweat, and tears to see a country that is religious, nationalist. That's not the Israel that they want to live in, right? Now, in the United States, I think the situation is a little bit different because, I don't see Charlie Kirk fighting for a new ideal. Okay, I think, so the religious in Israel, they're fighting for a new ideal in terms of the way the state was created. They want to see the state transform into a next phase that's something different than what the left wing supposedly is trying to protect. In America, you have Charlie Kirk. He's defending the original American values. So you see, in a way, everything is flipped on its head. But at the same time, the left in both Israel and the United States, they use the same violent rhetoric and tactics.
At the same time, after Charlie Kirk was murdered, immediately you had all these conspiracy theories come out on social media saying that the Jews killed him, that the Israel killed him, the Mossad killed him. And I just want to talk about anti-Semitism before we sign out. I spoke to Minister for Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism this week, Amichai Shikli of the Likud Party.
I have an interview with him coming out hopefully today.
So check that out on JNS TV. He told me the following. He said, this is a quote, anti-Semitism across the globe exploded after October 7th, 2023, after the massacre, as the haters of Israel derived hope that the Jewish state would be wiped off the map after they saw Israelis being murdered in the kibbutzim and at the Supernova Music Festival. So October 7th really created this rise in anti-Semitism. Everybody jumped on this anti-Jew bandwagon thing, thinking now's the time we're going to wipe out the state of Israel. And of course, Charlie stood up for Israel time and time again. So let's talk about anti-Semitism and the latest from America and Louis' conspiracy theories.
2 things to share with you.
Okay.
First of all, it's a quote from our Prime Minister. Prime Minister Netanyahu, I heard him say something that I've been saying lately, and I think that it's very applicable now. And he basically said, we are done being survivors. We are now warriors. And the world is used to Jews being the victim, being weak, being, after the ashes of the Holocaust. And it was nice to feel sorry for the Jews. Nobody likes it that Jews are strong. Nobody likes it that Jews can protect themselves. Nobody likes it that they have their own country. It's very uncomfortable. It's much easier to feel sorry for the guy who's not doing so well. And now that we're stronger, there's a book. It's called Everybody Loves Dead Jews. If you haven't read it, you should read it.
Darrell Horn.
Yes.
It's true.
I read it.
People want to feel sorry for us. That's number 1. Number 2, going to anti-Semitism. It's true. There's so much anti-Semitism. A lot of it is on campus. A lot of it is in stores or in supermarkets. But I was actually just in DC, and I was leading a delegation of the heads of the Student Union of Israel, all of the presidents of all of the universities from Israel, right, left, and everything in between. They came to DC. we were able to go and visit in the state capitol. And what I shared with them, this is the most important building that makes the most important decisions in the world. And they got to hear from Senator Bernie Moreno. They got to hear from Chairman Brian Mast. They heard from somebody like Leo Terrell. These Israeli students were blown away that there's people in the administration, there's people in America that have power and that are the decision makers and the elected officials that love Israel, that believe in Judeo-Christian values, that support the ideas of not just a Jewish state, but the values of a Jewish state. And they could not believe that not everybody hates them. So it's true. We have a lot of noise. The noise is coming from anti-Semites. The noise is also coming from the left. And all of this rhetoric that makes us feel like the world is ending and, this is the end of Western civilization. But at the end of the day, the right wing is in power in Israel and the right wing is in power in the United States. And there are many people fighting for the same values. And that's what brings America and Israel together. The haters are coming together, but the people that are the decision makers and the people that are the elected officials are also coming together. We see the collaboration between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. We see the collaboration between the Senate and the Knesset. It's actually a beautiful thing to watch. We see the Jews and the Christians fighting for Judeo-Christian values. So when you think that all hope is lost, and even when you're in DC and you're out there hearing all kinds of things in a very liberal city, you go into the buildings that matter, you speak to the people that matter and that are making the decisions, and you realize that, no pun intended, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And the Israeli students that were there, they literally turned to me and said, we didn't know that there's people that support Israel this way. These elected officials were telling them how they were weak on Israel and how they were much more powerful and fighters of Israel more than the Israelis themselves. So there is a positive energy that is felt when you are with like-minded people.
Final words, Alex.
Let's just hope that, like you said in the beginning, that Charlie Kirk's murder is a turning point for America in terms of recognizing what the values that made America great are, recognizing that in a democracy and diverse society that we don't need to agree, but that the power of ideas not only can win, but that's the strength of the country. The strength of the country is in the power of ideas, in the power of the public debate. We need that in Israel. We need that in the United States. And we can only hope that better times are ahead, even though we have lots of reasons for concern that the next period, it could be shaky if we don't wake up and change our ways.
Please God, better times ahead. Tila Falek-Levy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so
Welcome
much.
home to
I'm
Israel.
home in JNS.
You are. This is your home, no doubt about it. Alex Trayman, CEO. My name is Josh Haston. Thanks so much for joining us on the special JNS Roundtable. Shout out to our people behind the scenes here, Ryan Lifshitz, Zach Sickerman, Yuri Svertsky, and Esther Eden. Make sure you go to JNS TV for all the amazing content JNS has to offer each and every day. Go to jns.org for all the latest breaking news from Israel, the Middle East, and the entire Jewish world. Have a great week, everybody.